So based on not only this comment, but some of the comments I've seen on Twitter, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of just how small nuclear weapons are relative to a thing like a country. Yes, individually they're enormously powerful explosions, but saying things like they can destroy a country is absolutely nonsense, because how would we have tested them? I mean, we've tested many nuclear weapons both in the United States, in Russia, in the ocean. Obviously, they didn't destroy entire countries. So there's a very cool website out there called NukeMap. You just Google it, and it gives you the ability to play with different parameters. And those parameters involve things like the city you want to blow up, the yield of the explosion, whether it's in kilotons or megatons. You can even select real live nuclear weapons to see what exactly they do. I mean, all the way up to the largest bomb ever tested, and that was Tsar Bomba by the Soviet Union. It was a 50 megaton bomb. And that's what I'm going to use as the example. You can actually select air burst or surface burst, and then you click the detonate button and see what happens. So just kind of for the sake of understanding, I'm going to put the marker in the center of the US. Roughly. We'll just call it Kansas City. Not the absolute center, but you get the point. A nuclear weapon detonated here, if this person's comment were true, would supposedly destroy all of the country, all of the United States. So we'll go ahead and click the detonate button. And you can see, I came pretty close to Kansas City, you can see exactly the blast radius here. The green is the radiation radius. This is a lethal ionizing dose of radiation. The fireball radius, this fireball radius is about 5 kilometers, so it's about 10 kilometers in diameter. The heavy blast damage is about 20 kilometers in damage. Moderate blast damage is about 40 kilometers in damage. What you notice here, this is not destroying an entire country. This is the largest bomb that was ever tested in the history of ever. And relative to the size of the United States, you can see just how explosive it is, how much damage it would do. Obviously, it wouldn't destroy the entire country. But what about it with a smaller country? Let's go ahead and just kind of move it over and see perhaps London, for instance. Well, you can see, yes, it is devastating for the city of London. But again, doesn't destroy the entire United Kingdom whatsoever. So this idea that nuclear weapons can destroy entire countries is nonsense. And this brings me to another point. There has been discussions about the Doomsday torpedo, the Poseidon torpedo that Russia has created. And also there's apparently videos out there talking about how this weapon can sink the entirety of the United Kingdom. Now, I'm hoping that was hyperbole, because even with the biggest explosions, sinking an island of the size of the UK is ridiculously, it's impossible. It's just not going to happen. But basically, when you look at this, it's supposedly a weapon that when detonated in the ocean, it creates a tsunami, destroys a city. That's kind of the thought process of what is coming from this. But I want to show you just how absolute nonsense that is. So let's say we put it outside of London, 50 megaton outside of London. How far do you think the tsunami wave would go in? Do you think it would reach London? Do you think it would wipe London out, go all the way to Oxford or something like that? I mean, what if we move this down here? Would it go all the way to London? Well, for comparison's sake, I'm going to use the last massive tsunami we had to deal with, and that was in Japan. The earthquake that caused that tsunami was the equivalent to a 500 megaton nuclear bomb blast. 10 times larger than what you're looking at, 10 times larger than Tsar Bomba. The tsunami that was formed by that earthquake went inward into Japan 6 miles. 6 miles. If we put this closer to London, like in this area right here, the distance from here to here is 25 miles. 25 miles. So you would need a bomb that was 400 times larger than the largest bomb on Earth to ever have been detonated to cause a tsunami wave that would hit London. And honestly, by that point, you're just having a nuclear weapon big enough that the blast could destroy London. This is why this Poseidon, this doomsday torpedo, is a completely silly, like rah-rah propaganda bunch of nonsense that just gets Russian shills fired up and doesn't really provide any capability. Sure, putting the blast outside of New York City causes a tsunami. But again, the nuclear blast itself destroys the city well before the wave would get there. And it doesn't address a larger problem here. Sure, you may have hit New York, destroyed it. You likely didn't really destroy Washington, D.C. Maybe you hit Miami. On the West Coast, perhaps you hit San Francisco, San Diego. What do you do about the other cities? You got Dallas, Houston, El Paso, San Antonio, just in Texas. Huge cities. Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Chicago up here. You got Portland inland. You got Salt Lake, Denver, Phoenix. Major cities all over the country that you can't use this nonsense torpedo on. And once again, we're just back to using normal nuclear weapons in a normal nuclear exchange. So the idea that suddenly nuclear torpedo is a game changer for Russia is absolute nonsense. End of story. It provides no additional capability that a standard nuclear weapon provides. And in fact, the Department of Defense experts have said, so what? They want to waste resources on a nuclear torpedo? They have the capability to strike our cities with conventional nuclear weapons. And by, I mean, not like conventional weapons, but by traditional, I guess, nuclear weapons. Blowing up one in the ocean doesn't really make any more difference than just blowing up a city with one. So again, it's just, look at what we kind of created. And again, we haven't even seen these actually in use. It's just a silly bunch of rah-rah, look at what we can do nonsense that the Kremlin, Russian media uses to make the Russian people feel better about the shittiness of the totality of their military at this point.